it's important to note that the Conservatives, particularly in this country, but I think across the West, have been part of that net zero program. I once went on LBC, which is a radio show, and there was an MP from each party, including the Tories, and it was off topic. They suddenly went into net zero, and everyone agreed.
Yeah.
I was like, what's going on here? I'd say for ARC, there were... The classic left was represented. You had Maurice Glassman of the Lord Labour peer. You had Eric Weinstein, who he'd call himself a progressive. So it's not all the left, which is, I think, something that those who didn't go to ARC might assume it's some right-wing convention. And I actually think that was one of the beautiful things, is there are people who identify the same problems. We might have different solutions to them. And I thought that was a sort of wonderful thing that you got right, and maybe there's more room for those people there. But also in terms of this right-left wing thing and the way it's coded in low definition, I think one way of understanding ARC was a bit of like Hayek's definition. Have you read his essay, Why I'm Not a Conservative?
No,
and it's kind of, he has a paradigm where you have the sort of conservative, progressive line, and then you have the liberals who are kind of like a thermometer who will align, because they're more principle rather than temperament. They'll align with whichever side is less authoritarian or closer to their own principles. So at the moment, the liberals, and you've said this quite a few times, the classical liberal types are aligning with the conservatives because it's the progressives and the left who have gone completely authoritarian. And I would lump in the open society ideologues in that bucket. And that seems to me what the new paradigm is, the new dichotomy.
Well, we're kind of hoping that. My sense is, I just talked to James Orr about this in his new podcast, that the conservatives, see, it seems to me that the classic liberal project is viable when certain preconditions are met. And I think the conservatives stand for the maintenance of those preconditions. Now, it's complicated because the preconditions for liberalism are probably not well propositionalized. So you could imagine this, the thinkers of the Scottish Enlightenment, it's sort of as if they did this. If marriage is the standard and functional families exist and the nation is Christian, then everybody can be an autonomous individual. And then you can lay out the structure of autonomous individuality and you can engage on the liberal project. But if that understructure falls apart, then that system of classic liberalism can't maintain its integrity, because there's nothing that's like, every system depends on some axiomatic presuppositions to maintain its validity. And the conservatives, technically, I think the conservatives stand for the maintenance of those axioms. It's hard for conservatives to propositionalize what they stand for, though, because those axioms usually aren't explicit. It's like the working class identity, British identity.
Yeah, right.
Well, what's British? Well, they know it when they see it, but they can't say it. But it's not surprising because it's very complicated. It's like, well, is the monarchy British? Well, it is in its British form. And what's the British form of monarchy? Well, you could unpack that for a month, right? It's something like, you know, I think the American system lacks this to some degree. It's executive, legislative, judicial, and symbolic.
There's a problem with the American system.
That's right.
The
symbolic collapses into the president.
Why everyone loses their shit with Trump.
It's also why America produces dynasties, right? Like the Kennedys and the Bushes. And so, and who knows where that'll go. But the monarchy in the UK has this symbolic quality. It's extremely useful, and it does take a fair bit of weight off the executive branch. Because the prime minister isn't the king.
Right.
And
the prime minister himself has to kneel before someone.
Right.
It tempers him.
Right. And the king is supposed to be kneeling before God.
Quite.
And then the question, of course, arises which God, and is God real? But that's
our king has that problem, by the way.
Of course he does. Well, his God in some part is Gaia. And that's not a good substitute for someone who runs the Church of England. You know, and it's a degeneration into nature worship. And the nature worshipers say, well, there is no higher deity than the earth. It's like nature worshipers always end up sacrificing children. And you can understand why. You already laid it out earlier in the argument. You said, well, if you prioritize rats, you deprioritize children. Like that's a zero-sum game.
Right, because it is zero-sum.
Of course it is.
Exactly.
Relative value is a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
You know, and so if it's the planet first, then children aren't first. And well, you can see the consequences of that because we don't have any children.